Good evening and welcome to Community Homeworks class, Fire Safety in Your Home. This is part 2 of Home Safety and Security, and we're so glad you're here to learn some really important things about keeping your home and yourself safe from fire. Our presenter tonight will be Harry. He's one of our regular teachers, and he is a volunteer with the Ashtabula Fire Department, and he'll tell you more about that, I'm sure. If you have any questions during the broadcast, please feel free to type them in and we will try to answer them. I will let Harry explain how he answers questions, but you will get an answer. Again, we thank you for joining us. I'd like to remind you also that we are a nonprofit and do rely on your generosity of donations, and we will be sending that email address across the bottom of the screen. It will tell you how to send in a donation if you so choose. It will also tell you if you think of a question later on when you're watching this and it's not live, you can send your question to that address, that email address, and we will get an answer back to you as quickly as possible. Good evening, Harry, and thank you for being here.
Well, it's good to be here, and we'll do the best we can.
We always try hard. We were having a little technical difficulty earlier, folks. That's why we're running a few minutes late, but I think the guys got it worked out. So, Harry, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Jean, I'm a volunteer with the fire department, but I don't volunteer to put out fires. I've done that for many, like 45 years ago, but now I'm just their volunteer photographer, one of the 3 that we have. Fire safety in the home was something that was asked me to bring up, and I said, well, okay, I'm going to go and put together a program on it. Most of what you're going to see today is simply things that you've probably heard before, common sense things, but when it comes to safety in the home, particularly dealing with fire, you can't hear it enough as far as I'm concerned. So because of some of the technical difficulties, I'm just going to be asking Jason, who's in the background, to flip up the slides for us as we go through. I'm going to do a PowerPoint. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading to you what's on the PowerPoint. Just going to use that kind of as my notes to speak from and share some things with you. So if we're ready, Jason, go ahead and flip up the slide number 2. Uh-oh, we're not getting slide number 2 up. Jason, we there? Are we seeing my slides, Jason?
I think we've got it now, Harry. Try again. Do you see your cooking fire safety one now?
Yep,
Okay.
that's where we're up here right now on cooking fire safety.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. The reason we started with this is because most fires, as it says here, it's one of the biggest causes of home fires. And let's face it, you're there where you've got a stove, an oven, you're cooking, you're oftentimes using things that are quite flammable, like grease, baking, bacon, those kind of things. So that's one of the first places that you're going to see a fire happen in the home. Probably as far as home fire runs with our department, a good portion of our oven or stove fires. Can we get to number 2 or number 3 rather? I'm seeing it on my screen. Okay, we have number 2 up there, Jason, or number 3? Do we see number 3 up?
Yes.
Okay, so number 3. Basically, this is talking about keeping your cooking equipment clean. And quite frankly, do we clean everything, particularly the toaster, every time we use it? Probably not. Since my wife is the great cook in the house and I'm kind of then the cleaner, generally speaking, unless there's been something spattered on the top of the cooktop, we wipe it down. But if you see grease start building up, that's where things can start getting a little bit crazy and fires can start. Same is true with an oven. If you end up with a lot of buildup of grease and food particles, the oven can start on fire. Let's go to number 4 if we can do that, please. Okay, number 4.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Now we're starting to see this. Okay. One of the easiest things to do is when you're cooking is to leave when something's in the pan cooking. Obviously, the doorbell rings, you got to answer a phone, almost anything can happen. It's always good to at least turn it off. Now, of course, if you're simmering food, that's a different story, but it's always good to keep an eye on that. And if you have to leave any time, just turn the burner off. Keep an eye on things, because that's when, if grease, particularly if you're frying something and it starts smoking, that's a good sign that's about ready to take off. The slide out here also talks about turning the handles towards the back of the stove. It's an easy thing to do. It's probably common sense. We hear that a lot. I even know some people who say you should only put the pans on the back burners. But sometimes, particularly on our cooktop, the back burners are the ones that have the smallest flame, and the one up in the front is what they call super boil or something on that order. And that's where you're going to be doing a lot of your cooking. One thing people don't always think to do is keep a pan lid or a baking sheet handy, so that if the fire does start happening in the on a pan, you can place that on top of it and that'll smother the fire. Whatever you do, do not grab something with water in it and throw that on a grease fire. All that will do is throw the grease all over the place, hurting you and starting fires within the room. Let's go to number 5, if you could, please.
5 is up.
Okay, now it's working pretty good. We're finally getting this down. Oven fires. Probably as often as cooktop fires is what we end up getting calls for. In most cases, if something starts burning in the oven and you see flames, if you can shut the oven off, it will smother itself. However, if it doesn't do that and it starts right away and starts burning up, the best thing I can say to you is just get out of the house and call 911. Let's go to number 6, please.
6 is up.
There we go. Now we're cooking. All right. Maybe I shouldn't use that term. We're talking about fire safety, but electricity. Electric fires are the next probably most common cause. As you can see there, about 45,000 home electric fires each year is what they're saying. A lot of those have to do with various things in the electrical, wiring, lighting. We're going to find later on that really lighting isn't as much as some of the other things. The slide also shows here that home electric fires happen oftentimes between midnight and 8 a.m. when people are sleeping. And really, if you look at the other part of the slide, it says most of them happen between November and March. This is where I disagree with what I've seen on this slide, is that they're talking about lighting, but if you realize at that time of night when people are sleeping, and those months, that's when we use electric heaters often. And those are the things that I feel are more dangerous than any kind of a lighting situation. Let's go on to number 7, please.
7 is up.
Okay. This slide starts over there on the left to talk about plugging only one heating appliance, like a coffee maker, a waffle iron, anything. Just plug it into one plug. Don't use both of them for 2 heating appliances. In fact, if you can avoid it, if you have a heating appliance on one, don't plug anything else into that. Oftentimes, you're going to find that even if you have them plugged into a different outlet, they're on the same circuit. And that usually will trip the breaker or blow a fuse, depending on what you have. Next to it says, never use an extension cord for a heat-producing appliance. That's easier said than done, especially if you're in an older home where there aren't as many outlets. You may have to use an extension cord for a heating appliance. The thing is, you have to get a cord that can handle that heating appliance. Don't just go ahead and buy the cheapest plug you can find at like a department store or a discount store or the dollar store. That's not going to handle the electricity. It's going to start getting warm and fires will start. Extension cords should be used for something temporary. Again, sometimes it's easier said than done. But I've known people who have not had an outlet handy, drilled a hole through the wall and threaded an extension cord through the wall, plugged into another room so they'd have it handy. Bad news there. Yes, it's easy to say have an electrician install an additional outlet in the wall. That can be an awful costly item, though. Let's go to number 8, please.
Number 8 is up.
Okay. This talks a lot about some of the, I'm going to try and make my screen a little bigger because I didn't bring my glass with me. Basically, it talks about putting appliances in, major appliances, stoves, refrigerators, and so on. Again, staying away from an extension cord. Try to have an outlet close by. In most new construction, you will find that there will be an outlet in the area of the kitchen where the refrigerator is going to go. There's going to be a separate outlet, usually on a separate circuit for where the dishwasher is. And there'll also be some separate circuits in the laundry room, very close to where the washer and dryer is going to go. Also talks about plugging in small appliances into a wall outlet. Again, try to stay away from extension cords. Light fixtures. A very important thing to do is when you get a lamp, it almost always will say how much the maximum wattage you can put on a lamp could be in a particular lamp. That's because of the heat buildup in a light bulb. We get a little more flexibility now with the new CFLs and LED lights, because a light that says, a fixture says it can only take a maximum of a 75 watt bulb. A 75 watt equivalent LED is only 5 to 10 watts. So you can actually go ahead and put a 100 watt bulb in there, or even a 100 watt equivalent, or even bigger equivalent bulb, because you're not going to get the heat buildup. But if it's an incandescent bulb, stay with what they say is the maximum. Talking about outlets, don't overload outlets. In many cases, if you overload the circuit, the breaker will break, will shut off the circuit, or the fuse will blow. Unfortunately, that is something that you got to hope will happen. Circuit breakers do tend to freeze up occasionally. And if there's a call for a 15 amp fuse in a circuit, and somebody's put a 20 amp in there, that could get the wires behind the walls going. And again, this next little picture that's in there talks about using power strips and surge suppressors and extension cords. Again, don't overload them. Don't put too many outlets on them. Watch the rating on them. And because if you have too much going on, like you see in this picture, you run the risk of that particular strip getting warm, starting on fire. In fact, if you can, look for a strip that has its own little breaker, its own little overload device on it. Let's go on to number 9, please. We got some noise coming in here. Portable heater safety. So that's one of the big issues for fire in the home, and especially when we have some of the cold winters we have here, and people go ahead and start wanting to stay warm, which of course is understandable, particularly if some of the furnaces aren't working the way they should be. So let's go on to number 10, please. It's very important whether you use one of these radiator type heaters or the what they call the parabolic. They kind of look like a big bowl with a glowing bulb in the middle. Keep them on a good solid surface where they're not going to fall over. Some of the new heaters do have a device in them that if they do fall over, they shut themselves off. But again, you're depending on something that could or could not work. Try to keep them away from anything that could possibly be combustible. And the pictures here show keeping away from 3 feet away from drapes, furniture, papers, anything that can combust. And again, this is one of those things, if you're running it at night and you're asleep, you don't always catch that something's going on until it's too late. Also, when you're using a space heater, as I said before, make sure you have a cord. If you're going to use an extension cord, it's one sufficient to carry the amount of electricity needed to run that. And by all means, check the cord, check the plug, and make sure that they're in good shape, because if not, that's another place where fires can easily start. On number 11, please.
11 is up.
People don't think about is hoarding. And there are people involved in that. In fact, when I was working back in Detroit, I had to deal with a heating and cooling company. We had to put a furnace in a person's house that was a hoarder. Literally, I had to walk sideways through one of the rooms. It was a 2-bedroom home. One bedroom was so full you could not even you couldn't close the door. So let's go on to number 12. We'll just talk a little bit about why hoarding and fire go hand in hand. This particular house I saw, there was so much material in the kitchen area that I don't know how in the world were able to even cook, let alone cook and not have something start on fire. And even if there is anything that's in there, it would make it hard for them to get out. Anytime you got blocked doors, windows, anything else, or just having a room full of stuff, it makes it more difficult for firefighters to get in there, and they run into things that they just aren't planning on. Makes it harder to get to you, or at least save your property. Let's go on number 13, please.
13 is up.
Okay. You can't talk about fire safety without getting into smoke detectors in the home. Okay. This one here tells you to check the date. Smoke detectors are only good for about 10 years. In fact, when we moved into our house, we replaced all the smoke detectors just because we knew the house was built in '99 and we moved in 2017. So I wasn't sure that they were even had ever been changed. You can always check the date. It's on the inside somewhere, usually stamped someplace on the back of the smoke detector. Modern smoke detectors, in fact, many of them come now with a 10-year battery. So you never have to even change the battery. And when it goes bad in 10 years, you just change the whole detector. All right, let's go on to number 14, please. This
14 is up.
Okay, this talks about where to put smoke detectors. Modern codes now require smoke detectors to be in every bedroom, one in the hallway near the bedrooms, one on every floor. It goes on and on. They all have to be interconnected. In other words, if one goes off, they all go off. That's a little more difficult to do in an older home. If nothing else, at least get a smoke detector in every bedroom, or at least the hallway near the bedrooms. Even if they're not interconnected, at least it gives you some warning. And if you can only get one, get it in the hallway near the bedrooms. They're reasonably priced. The interconnected ones you can get interconnected ones that don't have to be wired together. I think they use either radio frequency or Bluetooth. But they're very pricey. But if you get a regular one that just you put in the wall, they tend to be relatively inexpensive. And if you go to fire stations, I think at one point they used to be giving them away, at least one. In any event, I can't stress to you enough about getting some sort of a smoke alarm in the house. And again, the bedrooms are good. One on each floor is even better, and the hallways is better. Unfortunately, in our house, when we moved in, they had one in the hallway, but the hallway comes into the great room, which is adjacent to the kitchen. And that thing was going off continuously. So you don't need one in the kitchen. That's probably not a good place, because even just simply cooking Sunday morning with the bacon was always one of our fun days, because I'm over there trying to hush the fires, the smoke detector. And it wasn't even smoking, it was just that simple. So let's go on to number 15, please. Along with fire safety is know that you have to have a way out of the house and plan for that way to come out of the house. Modern codes, again, require that any room that is a sleeping room must have what's called an egress window, and that has some parameters that keep it so much off the floor. It has to be a certain size that you can get out of. In fact, if you have basement rooms, usually if you had a basement bedroom, you had to have an egress window in the basement for someone to get out. Now they say if you have a living space in the basement, there must be at least an egress window. And I asked a building inspector one time, what do you mean by a living space? And his comment was, if you put a table and chairs down there, it's a living space. In any event, if you have a bedroom, particularly in a basement, come up with some idea as to how somebody can get out of there. I know it's tough, but one escape route, if there's only one escape route that's open and it blocked by the fire, it's a bad situation. Let's go on to the next slide. I'll continue on with that one. The next slide's up there. In our home, this one talks about having a map for people to look at and how you're going to get out of the house. I don't think you need to do that. I mean, if you do, it's not a bad thing, but it's not as important. It's just that you discuss how are you going to get out of the house. 2 ways out, a door, a window, and make sure they're not blocked. If you have a second floor in your second floor bedroom, as we do, well, we're in a ranch, but we have a walkout, so that means our bedroom is actually a second floor. How do you get out of that one? Well, we have an escape ladder that we can knock out the window. We can put this ladder down, climb down. If you don't have those, and they're available, but again, they can be a little pricey. You can at least get out to the window. You can jump, but that's not such a good idea. But if you can crawl out, hang, and drop, it's usually a little safer. This slide also talks about pushing the test button to make sure that your smoke detectors are working. It's a good thing to do once a month, once every 6 weeks, once a week. It doesn't matter. Just check them at least once a month. Or if you have one near your kitchen where the bacon cooking, that you kind of get an idea that they're working anyway. Whether you do a drill or not, some people do, some don't. I've been with the fire department on and off for about 50 years, really, or close to it. We haven't practiced a drill. But one of the important things that I got to stress with this is when you get outside, have a meeting spot. Back 40 some years ago, almost 50 years ago, when I was on the fire department, as a volunteer, I pulled up with my car before the engine even got there, and a woman was out in the front screaming that her father was still in the house. So I go in there, crawl on my hands and knees under the smoke, looking for the guy, went downstairs looking for him, came back out, and here he was standing in the backyard by the tree where they had agreed that they would meet if there was a fire. So it's very important that you have a meeting spot so everybody knows, and you're not trying to run into a building, risking your own life to save someone who's already outside. Let's try the next slide, please. Okay, that wasn't what I was looking for. Jason, can we go to that video now at this point? Because I don't think the slide I wanted came through. The video, what we're trying to get up here is when you go to bed at night, when you go to sleep, close your bedroom doors. It can buy you a tremendous amount of time. Okay, are we having some difficulties getting this up?
We'll get it together here. Sometimes it takes a minute.
Because I've been talking, I'm going to wet my throat a little bit here.
Go for it, Harry. We are glad that folks are watching us tonight, and please be patient with our struggles as we learn all the new technology things we've had to master this year. We certainly appreciate Jason having taken on learning how to do our video presentations, our virtual classes, and Kaylin for doing all of our artwork. There's the video.
All right. This video, okay, let's see. This video, if we can we run it, Jason? It describes, this is something that we did in Oshtemo Fire Department a couple of years ago. This little room, this 3-room item here was to represent 3 rooms. And in that center room, you can see where they started to put a fire on. The other 2 rooms, the one on the left has the door that's closed. The one on the right, I'm going to take that back. The one on the left, the one on the left has a door that's closed. The one on the right is to represent a bedroom where the door is not closed. This can get to be a lengthy video. If you could move it up just a hair, you might be able to just get into it. There we go. That's about what I'm looking for. You're going to see how this fire starts really roaring.
Well, and you can certainly see the smoke filling the room on the right.
And we've been able to use this. We've been able to use this in some of our talks in the in-person. It comes out a little more dramatic, I think. But you're going to start seeing just what happens. And I want to say while we're doing this, that this construction of this is really mimics typical residential construction. The door that separates the room from the burning, the two rooms from the burning room, is nothing more than a typical hollow core door that you'd find anywhere in your residence. While it's going on too, you might want to realize just how fast furniture can begin to burn. With so much of our furniture being made from synthetic materials, in fact, virtually all of it anymore, you can see how quickly, this is only 5 minutes, this whole fire segment, between starting it and putting it out, a little over 5 minutes. And you can see how fast the fire has spread to that room. You'll also notice as the firefighters start putting this fire out, how difficult it is to really put this fire out. They're running with an 1.5-inch hose. They're putting a lot of water into it, and it's just not going out very fast at all. So if something like this is enough to scare you, then that's a good thing. And just to save a little time, Jason, you can either move that up or even put on that final slide that shows a still image of the what happened with this.
It's just amazing how long it's taking to put the fire out.
Again, it's been a long time since I had to do anything like this, but I've had recently where I've been able to I've done some photographs of the work they do, and it seems like you can pump a lot of water and put a fire out that quick, but they just don't go. Once it's going, it's a very tough thing to do. So let's see if we can get that last slide up, because the last slide, it was a nice still picture that really showed the results of this situation. There we go. This is the perfect, being that it's closer, a better picture. It shows how the fire in the center room spread to the right room, and very little damage, little smoke damage to the one on the left. So if that is enough to keep you closing your bedroom doors, I don't know what else is. And that's about my talk for today. I'll take any questions if somebody pops it up, or if you want to send questions over to the office, they'll forward them on to me.
I have a couple of questions about not so much fire, but like how hard is it for the firemen to hold that hose? I mean, that looks like that's tremendous amount of pressure, water coming out of there.
We saw two guys on it, and you notice they were kneeling for part of it. That's an 1.5-inch hose. If they get into some of the heavier things, it's 2.5-inch thick water, and I think the last time, again, this goes back 40 some years ago, I had to handle a 2.5 hose. There were 3 of us holding it. That was the only way we could advance. So yeah, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, it's not like the fire truck rushes up to your house and sprays a little water and the fire is gone. It's work.
No, and it's a tremendous amount of water goes out. I've been on a few fire scenes, residential fire scenes in the last couple of years, and your feet get pretty wet just standing there taking photos. And I mean, I don't even get in close to them anymore.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how hard it is to be a fireman or a fire person, because there are women that do it also.
We do, yes. I believe here in Ashmo, we're down to just one now, and she's on leave. She just had a baby. But when I started with them, we had 4 or 5. But we move on. Somebody wants to talk a little bit about carbon monoxide detectors. What do we want to know about them? We have one in our home. Placement of it, the best thing to do is look at the instructions that come with it. Some will have them in various places. The biggest cause of carbon monoxide poisoning in the house is the furnace. Probably the second would be a dryer. Ovens and range tops, not as big an issue, although they can be. And that kind of gives me the dryer. Dryer vents, another big area where home fires can start. Lint is extremely flammable, particularly the lint that we have now, because most of our clothes are synthetic material. Get your dryer vents cleaned. If you can't do it yourself, have somebody come in and clean it. They'll run some sort of a sweeper through it and clean it out. And of course, the clogged vent, if you're using a gas dryer, is a source of carbon monoxide.
Well, and just remembering to clean the little screen in your dryer every time you do a load of laundry helps not push that lint up into the dryer vent itself.
Well, the thing is with the filter that comes in the dryer, if you don't clean it off, actually it does help keep lint from getting into your dryer vent. Mm-hmm. But again, you're creating a plug, so the carbon monoxide will have to go somewhere. It also impedes the drying of your clothes.
Mm-hmm. And if you use dryer sheets, you should take that dryer vent. This is the Comstock Fire Department taught us this one. You should take that screen, your dryer vent screen, out of your dryer and wash it very gently with soap and water, liquid dishwashing soap, because the stuff in the dryer sheets makes a sticky film on that screen, which will plug it even if you've pulled the lint off of it.
And I don't think you have to do that. I don't think you have to do that every time. And
no, they said like once or twice a year.
And once you do wash it, let it dry thoroughly before you run it again. Another question you have: how often should you clean a dryer vent? Depends on how much you use the laundry. I would say at least once a year, maybe 6 months. It depends again on how much laundry you have. When the kids were growing up, we probably used the washer dryer a whole lot more. Although we run ours just about every day, not with as heavy a loads. But my wife definitely likes to have the towels washed after every other day or so. So we had a lot of towels through there. Again, what I do is I kind of look at the vent outside and see how it looks. And if it starts looking like it's got some lint buildup, that's when I start running some way to clean it. And what I do is I take the vent outside the window or outside the house off. I disconnect the dryer vent tubing behind the dryer, and I use what's called a fish tape. Use it in electrical work. It's just like a big flat wire, and I run it from one end to the other, tie a rag on the end, and then pull it through. It's only a 4-inch pipe, so it doesn't take much of a rag, and it usually pulls off a lot of the lint.
All right. And do you recommend, I know we've talked about this in classes before, the accordion type venting from behind your dryer out, or is the smooth a better option?
Absolutely. Rigid steel pipe is the best. It isn't always easy to do to hook it up. As much as you can run your vent in rigid steel pipe. If you have to use some flexible pipe, there are metal pipes that are available. That plastic stuff with the wire running through it, a spiral, by all means, if you have that in your dryer now, get rid of it, because that's a fire trap waiting to happen. And the metal pipe, flexible metal pipe, it's available at any of the big box stores. It's not that expensive, and it's easy to use.
Well, and if cleaning it is an issue, which in one of my homes it was, that metal flexible pipe is so inexpensive, I would just replace it every year.
Exactly.
Take it down, throw it away, and put up clean. Then you know it's empty.
And again, you can get some of the environmentalists who are saying, you're filling the landfills, but I don't care, because I don't want my house going on fire.
Yeah, the landfill does not outweigh my safety.
Exactly. So, just kind of a brief little talk. Again, a lot of common sense, a lot of things you've all heard before. It's just that I know that the more you hear it, the easier it is to remember.
Does anyone else have any questions? Well, we thank you so much, Harry, for putting this presentation on for us. I think fire safety is something you start very young with your children. Remember the old, don't let your kids play with matches.
And maybe next time, if I'm using this PowerPoint, we'll somehow or another have it fixed up so we can use it a little more easy. But again, I thank Jason for being able to really handle what could have been a disaster. It really came out okay.
It did. It's amazing how we managed to pull it together.
There's a lot of technology coming out and people doing things during the last year and a little over a year. But when you got an old guy like me, sometimes it takes a little time to think about how to do this.
Well, and I'm right up there with you, Harry. So thank goodness Jason's younger and can figure it out. Again, we'd like to thank everyone for watching us this evening. We will have another class next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. To be announced at this point in time. We might just call it a mystery show, so you won't know what you're going to get, but you should join us and learn something anyway. Remember, you can always go back and watch these on our Facebook page or YouTube. And please tell your friends about this. Somebody watching this, it might make the difference. It might save their life. Again, Harry, thank you ever so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a good time to get with you guys. And hopefully we'll all see each other in real life someday soon.
Yeah, we're hoping for fall. So, everybody stay safe, stay healthy so we can get back to in-person classes. We miss seeing everyone very much and miss seeing each other. We haven't worked together since a year ago, March. So we miss seeing each other, let alone all of our participants. So again, thank you ever so much. And please join us again next Tuesday. Bye.
We'll see you.